This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
If we told you tomorrow that elk, black bear, and bighorn sheep were next, would you speak up? Wildlife needs to be managed by science and not by emotion. And you don't have to be a hunter to take part in this movement. You just have to want sound management of our wildlife in BC. Go to wildsheepsociety.com/act now to use your voice and demand that BC not use our wildlife as pawns in a game of social management. Act now. Or the things that you love could be next.
Steve-o, buddy, how are you?
Long time no see, my friend. How you been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so where has Talk is Sheep been? And so just a really quick and dirty, we had a great chat with Craig Stoley from Artistic Wildlife, and it was awesome, fantastic time, really informative. And we had some audio issues, so we lost that one, and then we've had a couple weeks here where Steve and I, mostly me, has been busy, but we've been just a little behind. So yeah, it's been a few weeks. We haven't given up on you. We've been really trying hard to do a weekly one. So we're a few weeks behind. The good news is a great episode today with fantastic guy. We had Donald C. Martin on the call. He's president of California Wild Sheep Foundation, director of guiding for Ultima Thule out of Alaska. Very experienced sheep hunter, experienced guide, winner of the Dalziel Award, the guiding award for the Wild Sheep Foundation. So great call today with Don. Lots of laughs and always entertaining listening to Don talk. So just a great show.
For those that might not recognize the name, we also know him as Hollywood. He was our guest speaker for the virtual event we just had for Wild Sheep Society. So you might know him from that.
Yeah. Great session with Dawn, and really enjoyed that chat. Learned lots about what's going on in California now, some of the issues. They had a black bear situation, kind of what we're dealing with here now with BC. So just a really good chat, and good to hear some of the success stories out of California. Wild sheep are doing well in the landscape. There's a lot of work to be done, but we've made some pretty serious inroads all across the landscapes in Western North America, and it's good to hear that California is doing well as well. So
yeah, it was also inspiring to hear that the situation they faced with the black bears, they turned it over. So it shows what we're doing up here can work if we all push back. So let's hope that happens.
Absolutely. So just a reminder for our listeners is that we have a membership drive going on right now. Check us out, Wild Sheep Society website, and get all the info there. Great sponsorship through Kuyu, Don Stevenson, and Yeti. 3 great giveaways there for that. So opportunity to upgrade your membership, maybe buy a 1-year, 3-year life Monarch. It's all there, and you get some chances to win. Pretty cool opportunity for sure. So don't miss out on that.
Absolutely.
So with that, this is a bit of a longer chat with Dawn. Great one. You're going to enjoy it. We'll be off and running to episode 28, and we'll be back to you very shortly. We got another one in the pipe here that you're going to really enjoy as well. We're not going to spoil it, but
yeah, we got a couple coming. Couple good ones.
It's good. So episode 28, Donald C. Martin, Enjoy Hollywood. Donald C. Martin, how's it going, buddy?
It's good. Excellent. Good to be with you guys, and thank you for the invite and a chance to talk. I'm excited.
I don't recognize you without the hair.
That's perfect. That was the goal all along.
That's awesome.
So you coming to us from the great state of Alaska, California. Where are you at in the world right now?
Currently, I'm down in California. I'm kind of in the bass fishing phase of my year, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Life's all about bass fishing.
Right on. So, Don, in the wild sheep world, you don't need much of an introduction, but there are probably a few people out there that don't know you too well. And every time I hear your story, it's different, it's exciting, and it's fun. And so, who in the hell is Donald C. Martin? Let's start from the beginning and give us the 5-minute version of Donald C. Martin, aka Hollywood.
5-minute version. Okay. So I like to characterize myself as a regular guy. I often characterize myself on stage or when I give talks as a farm boy from Madera, California, just a regular kid, grew up hunting and fishing like a lot of us. And I started tournament bass fishing at a young age, and and did quite a bit of hunting at a young age, and was lucky enough to have opportunities, after college, to roll right into the guide industry straight out of college. Just didn't have a lot on my plate. I was working construction at the time and got an opportunity to go to Alaska and apprentice, and changed my life changing experience. And I owe a great big huge debt of gratitude to Walter Chuck, former president of Oregon FNAS. He hung his name out there, took a chance on me, and he recommended me to the outfitter. He basically said, "Look, this you need to look at this guy. He can be a good fit for you." And got my foot in the door, and kind of never looked back. Just once I saw the frontier in Alaska, changed my life. And started out as a fish guide, rotated into the hunting side of it once I got all my accrued hours, days in the field, Coast Guard license. There's a lot of boxes to check. Alaska is a great state in the sense that they really do enforce regulations about guiding. You just don't. It's not like California. California, you fill out a one-page form and you're magically a guide. Alaska is a process, and it's a couple years to get your assistant license, a minimum of 3 more years to get your registered guide license, and another 12 years if you want to upgrade to master guide. So it's a real process, and it's good because you come up through the program, and you do all the grunt work first, which weeds out the people that think they want to be guides. But once you pack a moose out of a swamp or you butcher a moose in the water, you really find out who wants to be a guide. So it's a good process, and it was good for me, and it's been a good life. And the Hollywood thing comes from the fact that I graduated from Humboldt State University with a degree in film and theater. I've always been an actor. I've always been on stage from the time I was a little kid, and that just kind of grew and developed. And I met my agent in Los Angeles. He was a fly fisherman, and it just kind of came up like, "What do you do when you're not guiding?" And I said, "Well, I'm an actor and I'm got my degree in film production." And he said, "Really?" He says, "Well, I'm an agent. You should come to LA and we'll give you a shot." And so I did. And I got some positive feedback right off the bat. Was really encouraging. Did some national TV commercials, did some small movies, nothing really breakthrough. And really it was because I was my own worst enemy, because I had this other life. I had this life in Alaska. I had this guide life that was every fall you had to answer the siren song and go to the mountain. And the people in Los Angeles, you've heard me say before from the stage, they thought I was messed up on drugs because I just dropped off the face of the earth. I don't answer the phone. There's no emails. I vanish. They thought I was in rehab somewhere. And then I'd come back from Alaska and say, "No, I work in Alaska." And the people in LA couldn't believe I worked in Alaska, and the people in Alaska couldn't believe that I worked in the entertainment industry. So that went on for a few years. And then I had this epiphany, 20 years ago, 21 years ago, that really hunting and dealing with my customers and clients and spending quality time with people, having those intimate, really intense experiences, sheep and moose and bears and miserable weather. It really, it was more fulfilling for me than pursuing what I was doing in the entertainment industry. So I kind of just went full bore towards the guide side of the business and expanded on opportunities there. Got involved with a safari company in South Africa, produced some videos for them, promotional videos, did a bunch of hunting in Africa. Got involved guiding in Sonora, Mexico. I guided for 11 years down there out of Hermosillo. Great time. It's a wonderful experience for me. And yeah, it just became a thing. And then around 2004, I decided I really wanted to get in the sheep game. I thought that was going to be that was the best way to take my career to the next level, was to expand into mountain game, because I had really built a reputation on brown bears and moose. And so when I made that commitment, I really didn't know what kind of commitment I was making, but it changed my life. I killed a doll sheep for myself. I was able to guide a few people in the Alaska range, and in the meantime, I did some video work on a series called Cub Driver, all about super cubs and light sport aircraft. Produced a couple of DVDs that were very popular. And my business partner, Lonnie Habersetzer, arguably one of the finest bush pilots in the world, had developed a working relationship with Paul Claus at Ultima Thule, and he had recommended me to Paul, and Paul invited me out for a probationary season at Ultima Thule. This is 10 years ago, and that was a dynamic, dramatic change for me, to leave sheep hunting in the Alaska range and guiding in the mid-Mulchatna region for bears and moose, and going to the complete eastern side of Alaska, Yukon border, right up against the Kluane. Now I'm suddenly in the world's best concession for Dall sheep. Again, life-changing experience, because of a recommendation of a friend, Lonnie Habersetzer. And yeah, that was kind of the catalyst for all the dominoes that fell afterward, that subsequently really expanded people's knowledge of me, and a gross expansion of clients, especially in the sheep community. Started knocking down some big sheep, and then all of a sudden a few years go by, and one guide of the year, again, life-changing opportunity. And now here we are, and I'm trying to leverage the reputation that I've built over the last 26 years in the business to do good for wildlife and for conservation, and to entertain people, and help people along, make them a better hunter, make them laugh along the way, and just have fun with it. And now it's pretty much all I do. I guide full time. I don't have a side gig anymore, outside of fish guiding. I fish a few tournaments, but there's no money in it for me because I'm just not that good. But I have a lot of fun doing it because that was my real passion. And there was a time when I thought I was going to be a professional bass angler, but I grew up at a time when there was not a high school national championship or a collegiate national champion. There was no such thing as a full ride scholarship to Clemson to bass fish like there is now. So we live in a different time, in a different world, but ultimately here I am, and it's been a great journey, and I've met a lot of really magnificent people along the way, especially through Wild Sheep Foundation.
Awesome, Don. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things I want to touch on there. And, you mentioned Guide of the Year. So tell us about that. Now, this is in reference to Wild Sheep Foundation, the GCF Dalziel Award. Is that correct? And what does that entail?
Yeah, the GCF Dalziel Award, it's awarded annually, and it's there's a kind of a whole list of criteria, standards, and it's a cumulative award. The award is the members of the organization vote for nomination, the top vote tally or whatever, because it is cumulative year to year. So you kind of build up to it over a career. It goes to the awards committee. They vet you, make sure you don't have a bunch of skeletons in your closet somewhere, and they make the final decision. But it is a kind of a grassroots award. It does come from the membership, and so I stress now, having won it and seeing how it's changed my life and the lives of some of the other winners since then. I tell people, if you go on a sheep hunt with somebody and you just have the most spectacular experience of your life, you need to vote, you need to nominate, be involved, because it's the membership that drives that award, and it is based on a career, and really big picture. There are so many more people out there in the sheep industry, probably more deserving than but I came from a hugely broad background of guiding. And I've been in the business, like I said, 26 years now. I've guided 12 North American big game species. So I have this huge spectrum of experience. If you think about caribou, you're not going to think about me, but I've guided more caribou than any other species because that's what I started out doing. I've guided more mule deer than I have sheep, but nobody associates me with desert mule deer or Sonora mule deer. But, had a great time down in Sonora for a long time, killed a lot of deer. Uh, Great time, loved it, absolutely loved Sonora. And, but yet the sheep is suddenly what put me on people's radar. And there was, again, all the good in my life is because of the people around me, and I work hard to take care of my people and my friends, and when the time come, I believe it was Adam Casagrande. He's on the board of directors for California, lives in Idaho now. I think he basically was the catalyst. And when nominations came out in 2017, I think he sent out a group email to everybody that had ever hunted with me and said, "Hey, isn't it about time our buddy Hollywood wins this thing?" And so there was just kind of a mass of votes that came in and kind of propelled me to the top of the list. And I made it through the vetting committee because I didn't have any hard strikes against me in any way, shape, or form. And and I won the award. And like I said, it was spectacular. And I didn't even think I was eligible, to tell you the truth, because I had been led to believe somebody had suggested that I was going to win it in 2017, and then I didn't. And so I kind of thought, you know what, technically, I'm not even sure I'm eligible. And then so when I won in 18, it was a huge surprise. And I was just so emotionally overwhelmed. I gave this really impassioned speech about the industry and about conservation and about women and about the positive impact that the people in the Sheep Foundation have had on my life. And I continue to try to preach that message, especially to younger people, that you have no idea the impact that the relationships that you build and foster at Sheep Show, at Sheep Week, and in Wild Sheep Foundation are going to have on your life. And that's one of the best things about the sheep community, and it's the reason why Sheep Show is the best show, is because of the people, the quality of the people there. And there's a mutual respect at Sheep Show that you don't see at other shows, because everybody walking the aisles, they understand what it takes to get the job done in terms of climbing mountains, suffering, enduring bad weather, spending 48 hours in a tent, snuggled up to a 6'7" linebacker out of South Carolina. You just, it's a great environment, especially for young people to come up in that community, whether they've killed a sheep or not, but at least they aspire to be a sheep hunter. And I think maybe that's one of the most positive things about our community is encouraging people to set those goals that they don't think are possible. I never thought I'd kill a sheep. I never thought I'd hunt Africa. I never thought I'd go to Asia or hunt Europe. But yet I've done all these things because of the relationships I've built with the people that are around me. And I've worked on fostering those relationships, trying to be a good person and a good friend, a good steward of wildlife, and trying to be a diplomat, aspiring to be my father, a man with no enemies. I've failed. I mean, gee, I can write you a long list of people who hate my guts
Me
for
too.
one reason or another. But, but you know, it there's this thing. I think Dr. Wayne Dwyer talks about: if you put good into the universe, good will come back to you. And so that's what I've been trying to do my whole career. And really, I tell people when I started guiding, I was guiding for the wrong reasons. I was guiding for me. It was a selfish endeavor. I wanted to have those experiences. I wanted to kill moose. I wanted to kill brown bear, but I couldn't afford it. So I lived vicariously through my people. And somewhere along the way, I'm going to say about 6 or 7 years into the process of maturing as a guide, where suddenly I had developed some proficiency and was starting to develop a reputation. I suddenly realized that the more I made it about my client and the less I made it about me, the more satisfying it and rewarding it was for the client, but more so, I found a lot more satisfaction in what I was doing as a guide. Made me a better person. And that's now I joke with people. I just tell them, yeah, no, I'm best friend for hire. I'm best friend for 10 days. Let's go. That's what I do. Tell jokes, give rah-rah speeches, make mountain house meals, get up early, make coffee. Just all I do is dot I's, cross T's, and help complete that person, fill in the gaps for that person to get them over the hump and make them successful, whatever their endeavor is. It doesn't matter. Moose, brown bear, grizzly, bison, mule deer, whatever it takes, and have fun doing it.
Yeah, right on, Don. So I just want to just go back to your sheep show speech, and I have to say that I'd heard you speak before. I've heard you speak many times since, and that by far, there's no acceptance speech in the world I've ever seen that quality that you gave, and it was from the heart. It was impassioned, and I laughed my ass off. And sheep show for me that night was that made my sheep show that week. It was just phenomenal, such a great speech, and hilarious too. So kudos to you. It was that was a memorable experience actually. And every now whenever I get a chance to hear you speak, I always tune in because it's always going to be a good time. And that kind of set the stage for me was that speech at Sheep Show. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That it was for me. It was a very, like I said, I was emotionally overwhelmed, and it was a very organic experience. I kind of got lost in the middle of my speech. I had to take a breath and kind of like, okay, kid, get back on message. And just finish out strong and be humble and be thankful, and because the byproduct of that award is Bob and Arlene Hansen sponsor it, and it's a beautiful bronze, and it is a really it's a pinnacle as in the guide industry as far as I'm concerned. And I really didn't understand that until a couple of weeks later. I was at a different show, and I was hanging out with Pat Garrett, and he introduced somebody to me. And when he introduced me, he said, "This is Donald C. Martin. He just won the most prestigious award in the guide industry." And I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking of it in those terms, but now that I'm hearing it out loud, yeah, because it comes from the members. It comes from personal experience and interaction with people. This comes back to this thing about building relationships, and then suddenly, decades later, somebody, your friend is hanging their name out there and saying, yes, this is the guy. And so that was very enlightening for me. So I appreciate it all the more. And Kuyu sponsors the awards, closest thing to a sponsor I've ever had. And they give away a gear package, and then they sponsor you to go on a hunt in Montana. Spectacular hunt on probably one of the greatest pieces of property, the CA Ranch, Climbing Arrow Outfitters, Montana, north of Bozeman. Phenomenal piece of ground. I just killed the biggest elk of my life. Great experience. And so I have to thank Kuyu. Everybody over at Kuyu. Brendan Burns has been a good friend, and I have a lot of friends over there that have been very supportive. So I always try to do my best to support Kuyu and give back to them, because they really do contribute and give to the community.
Yeah, right on. And the sheep hunting world too, right? They're a huge supporter and big believer in conservation as well. So, Don, one thing you mentioned earlier, you talked about Sheep Week and the sheep family, and encouraging young people to get involved in wild sheep and the conservation angle. And get involved as a sheep hunter too. So one of the things that we hear, you've heard it, I've heard it, is, oh well, sheep hunting's a rich man's game. How do you kind of approach that, and what do you say to these young people that are interested but have this perception that no, it's for the wealthy elite, that sort of stuff? How do you talk to them about that and kind of dispel that myth?
Well, the first thing is, everybody who has even a slight inkling in wanting to hunt sheep, they've got to get involved with this draw process, and they have to do it when they're young. They have to do it sooner rather than later, and start building points. And I think if we instill in our young people a true appreciation of the North American conservation model, and they understand how it works, Pittman Robertson funds, state funds, making that contribution every year to a state that in all likelihood you're not going to hunt, they start to understand where those dollars go, and that it's good for wildlife for you to make this investment in potential opportunity, even if that opportunity is slim. You've got to look at it in the long haul perspective. Also, get involved with Wild Sheep Foundation. Every chapter gives away a sheep hunt. Yes, it costs money, but again, it all comes back to conservation and knowing where your dollars go, because we can all blow $100 pretty easy, buying stuff that we don't really need at the grocery store. Yeah, I like potato chips as much as the next guy, but they're expensive. Breakfast cereal, my God, $5 a box, $6 a box. If you know where your money's going on the conservation side, it's like, I'd feel better about throwing $100 at Wild Sheep Society of BC, or Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, or Cal Wild Sheep, or Oregon FNAS, or Idaho Wild Sheep, East Coast chapter, Midwest, Iowa. I mean, I'm a life member of, I think, 8 or 9 chapters. You know where your money's going to go, and you're in the hat. You have a chance. You gotta be in it to win it, and also plan long term for sheep, which might mean you set up a whole separate account and you start doing $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. Maybe you have to get a side hustle on to make some extra cash to make this a thing. And maybe don't shoot for the moon right off the bat. There's a bunch of goat species that are way more affordable, where you can have a sheep experience for a mountain goat price. And I'm not talking about a mountain goat with the top tier premier guys that are known for world-class goats and they're getting sheep hunt prices for a goat. There's a lot of affordable goat hunts out there. There's a lot of affordable ibex opportunities out there. Everybody kind of has a individual responsibility to, be their own hustler, and I think Brendan Burns talked about this one time at Mountain Academy a couple of years ago, about there are ways to finagle and play the system. And it has a lot to do with knowing people and networking and being able to travel on short notice and being willing to say yes And I have another very good friend that has told me many times that when it comes to sheep hunting, yes, it's expensive, but an individual need only have the will to commit and commit to this idea. I am going to do this thing. And it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, but I'm going to do this thing. And in the meantime, I'm going to put in for draws. I'm going to buy a few raffle tickets and support Wild Sheep Foundation, support conservation. But I'm going to have a plan, and I'm going to start talking to people. What do I have to do? Do I have to go work in Canada for 3 years for free to earn a sheep hunt? Do I have to go to Alaska and be? I killed my sheep because I was a guide. I was already there. I couldn't afford it, but I was already there. And I basically, I knew I wanted to kill a sheep, and I knew the only way I could do it is if I encouraged my outfitter at the time that we get into the sheep game. And that when I became a registered guide, the first 3 areas I put on my license were sheep areas. And so the first hunts I ever contracted as a guide were sheep hunts. And it was 100-mile super cub flight to even get to the mountains. So we were stretching it out, but it was something I wanted to do. It was a goal. And that's what I tell young people is you need to just set a goal, have a plan, and then stick to the plan, and then somewhere along the way, something's going to give. You're either going to draw a permit, you're going to win a raffle, you're going to meet somebody. And like I said, you got to get on your own unique hustle. I got a lot of opportunities because I knew how to run video camera. And I went to Asia because I was a cameraman. And that's how I killed my ibex in Tajikistan. Is I filmed a Marco Polo sheep hunt, and then that opportunity, and we were already there, and that opportunity suddenly became a thing. And I shot a mid-Asian ibex, and and then I went a second. I've been to Tajikistan twice, both. So you've got to find a way. You got to find a way to hustle and work the system and massage those relationships and just take care of the people around you. And it's shocking the opportunities that suddenly present themselves. I should have already killed my desert bighorn, but I didn't have this kind of slush fund set off to the side for emergency desert bighorn hunt. Go in 3 days. It's 25,000 only. I've turned guys onto hunts for desert bighorns for 25 grand, and they've gone down and shot a ram in Mexico, free range ram in Mexico, 25,000. Shoot a ram in the high 160s. That's a pretty smoking deal in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too with COVID now too, there are these opportunities popping out, right? Guys are getting some cancellation hunts and that sort of stuff. And some of the outfitters are struggling a little bit because they can't get clients in camp. So there's some opportunities there, unfortunately, for the outfitting industry, but it's a reality, right? So
absolutely. And also when you start looking at sheep opportunities, you might have to change jobs. You might have to change the state you live in. You might have to dramatically change your life if suddenly that becomes a priority. I live in a state where in a good year, we give away 29 permits, but I could move 2.5 hours away and be in a state that gives away 250 permits, or that's an exaggeration. But the point is I could take my points as a non-resident, move there and draw a permit. So you have to ask, and that's why I say if you develop this sheep fever at a young age, it's good and bad, but you've kind of got a plan. And if you're young and single and flexible, you've got a lot of opportunities. Yes, you can become a guide. Yes, you can move to Canada. You can move to a better state that has opportunity. You can work as an agent. I know there's a lot of outfitters that you book them 10 guys, they'll take you on a sheep hunt. Again, it's finding what works for you to generate opportunity. And it doesn't have to be about money, because I've hunted all over the world. I've never made more than 55 grand in a year. So, and that was back when the .com money was big, So
right. Yeah. So Don, let's just look at your situation, talk us through a typical year for you. So you say you're bass fishing right now. You're in your bass phase. Talk us through the months on what your guiding life looks like, and then that's going to lead us to the conservation thing, because I know in the off season that's a big part of your life too. So let's talk about what you do throughout the year. What is it, the year timeline starting, say, May of 2021? What does that look like for the next year for you?
Okay, so if we're starting off in May, okay, that's my bass fishing time of year. I'm here in California. I am a registered fishing guide. I do a bit of guiding on the California Delta. I dabble in some of the pro tournaments here in California. That's pretty much kind of what my focus is, May, June, and July. On top of that, when I'm not focused on fishing or that sort of thing, I'm still doing correspondence with hunters. I'm doing, equipment correspondence and having conversations with all of my upcoming hunters, scheduling flights and all of that stuff, working with them, making sure that, we're all on the same page about what day they have to show up, which hotel I want them to try to stay at, and walking them through the process so that my hunters come August are fully prepared, that there's not going to be any big red flags or surprises. So I'm finalizing my fall season through the summer while I'm doing a bit of fish guiding, maybe fishing a tournament or two. And then I leave for Alaska in July. And so I go up and we start our program. Our summer program at the lodge is primarily ecotourism. We are probably one of the, well, I won't say probably. I'll say we're the top ecotourist destination in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. A lot of our clientele is foreign, but they come to see the park, and the best way to see it is outfit like Ultima Thule. And so when I get there in July, I'm kind of ramping up all of those facilities and infrastructure necessary to run the hunting program, because I'm only in charge of the hunting program. I'm director of hunting operations. So I get there with my guide staff and we start ramping up. And, that's everything from inventorying how much freeze dried food we have, cleaning out the skinning shed and blowing out, a whole season worth of glacier dust, and prepping our areas to process meat, process trophies, and scout and fly around. And, Paul is very good about, we develop a catalog of sheep. We try to photograph the bulk of the sheep in our concessions if possible, so that we know what we got to work with. We know how many rams, we know the quality of the rams. We can kind of scroll through photos, and we start putting together a game plan for the whole season based on the client's experience, the physical fitness level, what they're capable of, where we can take them safely. And then as we get into August, sheep season opens, and we're just hardcore, nothing but sheep until about September 20th. As we get into September, we do some combo hunts. There's a couple of mountain goats usually in there. Somebody will maybe add a moose. Bison opens on September 3rd. So starting about then, we do some drop-off hunts for those two individuals that are lucky enough to draw the Chittenden River bison permit. And inevitably, we almost always guide the governor's tag for bison for state of Alaska, which is also Chittenden River permit. And so that gets us through September 20. We roll straight into mountain goats and grizzlies after sheep and moose close. And we do a couple of goat hunts. We do we're there 3 weeks for goats and grizzly. By then, the ecotourism part of the business is shut down. We're winterizing the camp. We're not really set up for full winter operations there. And so we're usually out of there the second week of October. The hunting program's pretty well wrapped up. I immediately come back to California. I go straight down to Monterey, where I guide for Thule elk. And I generally do a Thule elk bull hunt in the end of October. And after that, I take November off for myself. So I have the month of November to try to squeeze in a hunt for myself. I used to go to Kansas every other year to bow hunt whitetails. Then I started expanding my horizons, and now it's mostly about what I can draw. There's a lot of good late season archery hunts in November across the Western U.S. So I hunt for myself in November. December, I wrap up my Thule elk hunts. I have another bull hunt that I do and a couple of cow hunts. If we have any Thule elk cow permits through the holiday, tags are good till December 31st. And there have been days where I've killed Thule elk cows with hunters on December 31st, last day of the season. And then Happy New Year, and we're getting ready for sheep show. And we go straight into trade show season. And typically I will do, I'll do sheep show, and I will do, often do one additional show, but sheep show is my primary show. And we pretty much are at a point now that we only have to do sheep show. Our waiting list is so extensive that we don't need to do a show outside of sheep show, but we do make an appearance at other shows to try to support them and be supportive of our friends that are supportive of those other organizations. And so that kind of gets me into February. And then usually once I'm into February, it's all going to be about wild sheep chapter dinner season. And I do a lot of travel. I go to a lot of events, and I've been very fortunate to have been asked to host many events. You know, even in December, there's an event. I host the Alaska Professional Hunters Association event. And then, you know, whatever's on my schedule. If I'm available and they want me to work with the chapter, anything I can do to help the chapters, I'm pretty flexible. I pretty much dedicate the whole spring to wild sheep chapter events. Our event, California, currently I'm the president of California Wild Sheep Foundation, co-chair of the fundraising committee, and we throw our party in either end of April or first week of May. So generally that keeps me super busy going into May. I do some spring turkey hunts. I guide a few hunters every spring. I try to do some youth hunters in the spring to get more young people involved with hunting. Turkey hunting is a people to kind of almost a controlled environment if the birds are cooperative, because you're calling a bird to a set location. And in the blind. So if the kid is fidgety or, you know, or nervous, or we can get away with a lot more than just running and gunning and leaning up against a tree. So that's been a really positive experience. And if we're really lucky, we can get a turkey killed, and then in the course of the same hunt, we can often kill a wild pig, which is just great for young people to have that experience that are so drastically different in the course of a single day. Sometimes, well, kill a turkey in the morning, you know, calling them in and learning that whole process of how to hunt turkeys, and I try to walk them through it. You know, I try to educate them and make them understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what works, what doesn't work. And, you know, if I set up a call and it doesn't work out, I can kind of argue and say, well, this is why it didn't work out or whatever. But then to turn around and then do a spot and stalk hunt on pigs in the evening and kill a hog, it's a well-rounded experience. And then they learn this whole process of how to turn animals, it's really important. It's a skill set that a lot of young people are not learning these days because of the increased urbanization of both the United States and Canada. Everybody lives in town anymore, and they're not exposed to the rural lifestyle of hunting and fishing and domesticated livestock that you raise and eventually slaughter, and having a big garden and growing your own food. These kids really they need to know where their food comes from, but more importantly, they need to know how it goes from being a living, breathing animal to a pork chop or a cheeseburger. And then they start to appreciate it a lot more, and they understand the responsibility that goes along with taking life to sustain life. And we do that in the spring. And then, like I said, that gets us back to May. And then I'm mostly about fishing and prepping my hunters for the following fall.
Grizzly
Right
hunting.
on.
I've heard of that. What's that?
What's that?
Grizzly hunting. I've heard of that. What's that about?
The grizzly bears. Yeah,
that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole, yeah. We could burn up 2 hours just talking about grizzly bears. I mean, the difference between
good.
the difference between grizzly bears and brown bears was a
Yep.
shocking experience for me.
I bet.
Grizzly, especially in the park, grizzly bears are rude and
Yes.
mean. And I've had more bears try to kill me in the last 10 years than my first 16 combined. It's just brown bears are afraid of people. They run. Grizzly bears, they got to
They don't
work harder
care.
for their groceries.
Yep.
They know they've got to kill stuff.
That's right.
Yeah. And I shouldn't discount brown bears. There's no shortage of people who've had really traumatic close calls with brown bears. Trust me. But for me personally, when I moved to the Wrangles, like the first year, I got charged the first year I was there. I was like, oh my gosh. So
Wow. Good times.
Cool.
good times.
So Don, let's shift now to the conservation discussion. So, president of California Wild Sheep Foundation, huge supporter of all these chapter affiliates, life member across the gamut. 8 chapters, 9 chapters, whatever you mentioned there. So let's just jump actually right into California. What's going on in California? Your chapter president there. What's on the horizon? How are sheep doing? What's happening in California at the chapter level with wild sheep?
Well, we have a program that we started a few years ago. It was part of a brainchild of Mike Burrell and some of the other founding members called Give a Lamb a Drink. And we work in coordination with our sister affiliate organization down in Southern California, Society for the Conservation of Bighorn Sheep, who are the actual boots on the ground building the drinker project team. And they're basically a water for wildlife organization. We operate as a fundraiser to drive those projects. And over the years, we have developed a really good relationship with United States Marine Corps. And we put in quite a few drinkers on the Air Ground Combat Center at 29 Palms to try to encourage sheep to cross between these mountain ranges that we know, based on some DNA data from Clint Epps at Oregon State University. He's just done an exhaustive amount of DNA research that shows that there is this connectivity between mountain ranges and sheep, and we know that they cross. And then we cross-reference that with some radio telemetry collar data and GPS collar data, and we know that there are points in which you have young rams or ewes that are trying to immigrate to that other mountain range, and they reach a point where they kind of peter out and panic and go back. And the reason is because there's lack of water between those mountain ranges. And so the work we've done with the Marine Corps in terms of trying to connect those dots and restore that connectivity between mountain ranges has been very successful. We do a lot of emergency water hauls. Right now, we're in another drought, a horrible drought year. This is going to be a very expensive year for us in terms of, because we didn't have significant rainfall in the Southern California desert, we are hauling water to some of these existing drinkers. That sheep are critical for desert bighorns, not just Nelsonized, but for peninsular desert bighorns. And so we are doing a lot of emergency water hauls, and the work that these guys do is we're talking moving thousands of gallons, and that they'll string a half a mile of fire hose to get the water to the tank in some cases, because we constantly face challenges with the Wilderness Act and wilderness boundaries, and that we can only truck the water so far, and then we somehow have to magically teleport it to the drinker. And what happens is you have a small army of volunteers that string a half a mile of fire hose, and then we use a couple of water pumps in succession and some check valves, that sort of thing, move it up the hill and get it up to the drinker to provide water for wildlife. And in worst case scenario, we helicopter the water in to fill the drinker. So I think our goal was to double the number of Nelsonized Nelson bighorns in Southern California, because we know in doing so, successful conservation will yield expanded hunting opportunity. And a lot of people, we get this accusation all the time about, well, you're only trying to conserve sheep so that you can shoot them. It's not entirely untrue, but the truth is that a successful hunting program is a byproduct of successful conservation. Okay, if we're failing on the conservation side, then there is no sheep hunting, because we don't have a sustainable yield that we can take off of that herd that will have zero to no impact on the herd. And I think a lot of people they misunderstand this fact that when you look at the rams that were taken out of the herd, these are often rams that are going to die anyways. They're over the hill. They're done with their lifetime reproductive success. The hunters are targeting specific animals. They're not necessarily taking rams in their prime. They're tending to take older age class rams. A lot of times they've moved out of the cohort. They're done duking it out with the kids, and you've got these big rams off by themselves, and or groups of mature rams, class 4 rams, and those are often the rams that are being taken off. When you see, and I will say this, when you see a young ram get killed in one of our units, that's a person who's come to the horrible realization that they are not a sheep hunter, because they'll climb the mountain one time in that Southern California desert, and then they'll say, "You show me a ram and I'll shoot it," because they're shooting the sheep in self-defense. They just want to get off the mountain. And we have that happens every year, where we have guys that they deer hunt, and they put in sheep and they draw it, and then they realize this was way more hunt than I was bargaining for, and they literally shoot the first ram that steps in front of them. They're not being selective. They just want out. And that's to O'Connor's quote about you're gonna know if you're a sheep hunter or not. You only have to hunt sheep one time. It is a brutal litmus test that weeds these guys out in a hurry, and often it's 1, 2, 3 days. And a lot of these guys are weekend hunters anyways. They've never spent 7 days on the mountain, or 10 days on the mountain, or 14 or 21 or 30. That would be absurd to them, and so that occurs. But for the most part, you do see selective harvest, and the rams that we take, especially here in California, traditionally, and we're kind of a sleeper state for really big desert bighorns. A lot of people don't think about it, but it's unfortunately there's only a couple permits for non-residents that are available, and so if we're successful and we can build 90 more drinkers, and that is our goal, and we've found a bit of a loophole to get away from this bureaucracy called CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. We think we found a way that we can get around that, and we can do these projects for wildlife without going through this horrible, environmental impact statement bureaucracy process that takes years. And then somebody from some eco-groovy group that lives in a state somewhere else can suddenly just put an injunction on you and stop your project. And even though it's all volunteer and it's all for the benefit of wildlife, and there's a whole host of curious politics that are unique to California, but tragically, I think you guys in BC are experiencing a lot of that's been ever since the grizzly bear closure up there. You guys are seeing more and more of these urbanites that are forcing their kind of wildlife management ideals on a system not based on wildlife management or wildlife science. So that's the battle that I think all of us are up against. But for California, the future is bright. We're recovering from a couple of disease events. The old dad Kelso Peak had a serious disease event here years ago. This year they are issuing a permit for the unit, which is encouraging. San Gorgonio's, that unit recovering from a disease event. We're seeing dramatic expansion in some other units. I think the brightest note that nobody really knows about, although I think a couple issues ago, Wild Sheep Magazine, there was an article regarding the Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep herd and the dramatic expansion of that herd. Now, when I started at Humboldt, there was less than 100 people were talking about that we were going to see Sierra Nevada bighorn go extinct in our lifetime. And they were thinking of all these dramatic ways to try to capture them and move them somewhere to either a huge enclosure or an island, or there was all of this out of the box thinking about how do we save these things. But they came up with a plan, just a dedicated plan, and it did include predator control. This was, now I'm talking pre mountain lion protection, which is a thing unique to California. For a lot of people who don't realize, in 1991, the state of California, due to a ballot measure, became the biggest mountain lion sanctuary in the world. In the world. Okay, it's a special protected status awarded just to mountain lions, and now we not only are the biggest mountain lion sanctuary in the world, arguably we have more mountain lions than anywhere else in the world. That's problematic for bighorn sheep, and more so for California mule deer and blacktails. So there's a whole host of other politics I could get into, but I don't want to. The point being, Sierra Nevada bighorns are now, we went from, let's say in the late 80s, we went from let's say 95 animals, and we have 650 of them now.
Wow.
And
awesome.
we are so close to meeting recovery goals that now the conversation has changed from, oh my God, they're going to go extinct, to, okay, they're potentially going to be eligible for delisting in the next 8 to 10 years, because we have to maintain certain minimum populations over certain habitat units. And then once we meet all that, and then we monitor there's a 5-year monitor period, then we can delist them. And what happens after that, I don't know. I do know that if they issue a fundraising permit for that herd, you're gonna see $250,000 or more get dropped on that tag, and that's money that goes straight to the sheep program. That would be a huge shot in the arm. Be literally the sacrificial ram to help save Sierra Nevada bighorn. But at this point, there's going to be some politics involved, but I'm just happy that over the 10 years that I've been really involved as on board of directors for California, that we've seen this dramatic expansion of the Sierra Nevada bighorn. It's a great conservation story that just doesn't get a lot of press, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And with that, Don, is that kind of indicative across the state? Have you guys seen growth? That, I know you're saying it's stable and they're doing well, but are you seeing generally growth across the state, or is it just kind of plugging along type thing?
The numbers we see numbers improving in some areas. We're actually trying to lay the groundwork to open additional hunting units. We're encouraging the Department of Fish and Wildlife to survey mountain ranges that historically have had a lot of sheep, and maybe kind of went through a bad time, whether it's the chocolates or the chuckwallas. There's a number of mountain ranges that have way more desert bighorns than they know about, because they don't survey them, and they're not priority. And we've got a huge unit that has more than 500 desert bighorns in it, but they don't issue any permits because of the politics, because guess what? It butts right up to Los Angeles. And so you're going to have, as soon as you open it to public comment period, you've got every blue-haired little old lady from Pasadena coming in there saying, well, we don't want anybody hunting in the San Gabriels, when in fact, I think they hand out 6,000 deer permits for that unit. So we're not inventing the wheel here. Hunting already exists in the San Gabriels, and originally they didn't try to open it as a unit. When desert bighorn hunting started in California, specifically because of politics and because it was so close to an urban area. But I think there's precedent in other Western states where you have an overlap of user groups that have dramatically different politics and feelings about wildlife. Colorado is a great example. There are units where if you draw a goat tag, you can only hunt during the week. So it lessens your chances of bumping into weekend hikers who maybe don't approve of big game hunting. So precedent exists where different user groups, say consumers versus non-consumptive users, they can share the space and limit the conflict. And it's California. There's always going to be conflict. There are people that are going to want to thrust their will and opinion upon others, and that's what we see, and that's kind of what we're up against, because we are a very populous state. There's 34, 35 million, people that we know about. There's probably 2 or 3 million people living in the shadows. So we're a great big giant state, and we have a lot of politics to navigate. And California is a great big state, and we have a tremendous amount of natural resources and public land. For people who haven't been here before and don't realize it, we have a whole lot of opportunity. We're the only state in the union you can kill all 3 species of elk. We've got Rockies, Rosies, and Thules all in the same state. Luckily for us, we have all the Thules, but we're the only state you can get your elk slam in. We have 2 species of deer, and a lot of opportunity year-round hunting for pigs, and and our waterfowl hunting is, some of the best in the Western Flyway. We're in a magnificent state for black bears. We kill huge black bears here, and that's just going to do nothing but explode. Black bear populations, we're sitting in 30, 35,000 black bears right now. They took the dog hunting away with us, from us. And once they took away the dog hunting for bears, annual harvest dropped by 50%. So that's 650 more bears on the mountain every year, half of which are sows, most of which are going to throw twins. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out over the course of a decade or two, we're going to have more bears than deer. That's a law of unintended consequences that people who suddenly thrust themselves into wildlife management, they don't necessarily see the ramifications of what they're doing when they proceed from an emotion-based argument versus a science-based argument.
Wow, you set us up pretty much for exactly what we're dealing with here in BC, but we won't delve into that today. So, yeah, no, and you guys recently just had, I guess, there's a bit of a success story there where there was, I think, it was a petition or a government act where they were asking to change the regulation around bear hunting, and conservationists and hunters in California stood up and spoke their piece, and that changed that policy there. So can you touch on that briefly, Don? Or
Yeah, so that was an interesting situation, but it completely characterizes all of us here in California that are wildlife enthusiasts and hunters and sportsmen. It is the perfect characterization of what we're up against. You had 2 representatives that throw a bill out there, potentially, one from San Francisco, the other from Los Angeles, neither of whom really have to live in an environment or live or deal with bears in any great numbers. And there are bears in the Los Angeles National Forest. It probably surprises a lot of people that there is such a thing as the Los Angeles National Forest, but there's a lot of big open ground down there, and they do have bears. But when you have people from the 2 major urban areas of the state introduce a bill that's going to put an end to bear hunting, we're a state, we have 52 counties, and most of the eastern counties and northern counties have really high bear densities, and the human bear conflict is at an all-time high in areas where everybody wants to have a summer cabin, up out of Tahoe somewhere, or up in Northern California somewhere. And it just, human black bear conflict really is at an all-time high. We have a lot of problem bears. And so we waged a very aggressive social media campaign to try to, enlighten people about what was going on, what our situation was in terms of this was legislation not based on science. We've got more than 30,000 bears and a wildly, almost exponential population growth for those bears. and that this was not going to do the bears any good, wasn't going to do the environment any good. And at the end of the day, some government agency was going to have to go kill these bears anyways. And so I think once we kind of made sportsmen aware that this was happening, there was tremendous pushback, and the legislation was withdrawn in 2 days, because as soon as these two representatives were outed, um, that their offices just got a deluge of calls and emails, and the petition numbers were awesome. So tremendous response from the sportsman's community, and I tell people, you know, you don't have to live in California to have an opinion about California bears. All you have to do is say, you know, I hope to hunt California one day, or I have hunted California once upon a time. If you're actively hunting, and and you are purchasing a hunting license or applying for points in a state, you have an opinion. And I think even and that becomes a point of conflict where you run into, say, resident non-resident conflict over opportunity, but yet you have this whole other group of people investing in your wildlife management and conservation, and you need to kind of understand that we're all on the same team whether you live here or not. And that's why when you asked me to speak for the Wild Sheep Society, I I wanted to touch on the point that Americans should have a say in British Columbian wildlife management, because we invest a lot in wildlife management in BC. We support a lot of jobs. We support a lot of indigenous people and rural communities. We buy a lot of goods and services, um, and we want what's best for BC and BC wildlife and BC guides and outfitters and businesses and jobs and indigenous people. So, I wouldn't discourage anyone from, being vocal. You're going to get some pushback on in some cases, and there's always going to be a bit of conflict about guys that say not in my backyard, or it's Canadians first and screw those Yanks. Um, and I understand that, but we're at a point, I think, in both of our nations' history, we live in very curious times, and we really need to demonstrate greater solidarity going forward to support one another, to support the culture and the lifestyle and the belief system that we all love, um, and to manage wildlife in a manner that yes, benefits our culture and lifestyle and belief system, but also provides opportunity for non-consumptive users to enjoy and see wildlife. And I think we can balance that. Um, we just need to be better about the manner in which we market ourselves to the non-consumptive wildlife enthusiast. And sometimes that can be very difficult, because they've made up their minds. They've made a decision, and they will not be convinced. But if you always try to proceed from science-based management and not get emotional, and not get worked up about you're destroying my entire culture and belief system, uh, I think at least there's hope. There's always hope, um, and that's why I always try to be as diplomatic as possible when we talk about big game hunting, because I understand. I mean, we're killing animals. It's going to elicit a very visceral response from people who do not kill animals, and then people who are, let's say, even more extreme, let's say vegetarian or vegan. Now that's a belief system that's entirely contrary to what we do, and so they will not be convinced. But you if there was a means, by some magical method by which we could gain some traction in that community, to at least allow them to do what they want, but encourage them to allow us to do what we want, um, that would be great. But their politics are such that they're they really don't want to work with us. They don't want to mutually cohabitate. They would really like to see our entire belief system go away. And I think unfortunately we're seeing that across the board politically as our two nations become more tribal all the time, and people are retreating to their own corners, and they're not talking. And that's why I always tell people, share your meat. If you kill a deer or elk, share that meat, especially with somebody who's maybe never tried it or doesn't hunt. Be a good ambassador for what we're doing, and that's going to yield benefits, not just to maybe us as individuals, but to us as an entire community.
Yeah, well said, Don. And the solidarity point really resonates. And I think we have to do a good job of looking out for each other. I think our wild sheep community, we do a great job of that, and we just need to, as hunters and hunter conservationists, we need to really get on that same page. And so, on that note, that kind of leads us to what can we do to support California? What's going on down there? Just talk about your local chapter, what we can do, a little bit of membership stuff. I'm a life member, obviously, as you know. But what's going on fundraising wise? How can we support California and make sure we keep the sheep on the mountain in your state?
Well, right now we just wrapped up our fundraiser. We had a very successful virtual event. I was really happy with how it came off. I thought our production value was pretty strong. I thought it was entertaining. That silly haircut stunt that we did, looks like the haircut alone, we're gonna do 19,000 on the
Wow,
haircut.
nice.
So and the way the challenge funds and matching dollars shaped up, the split, we actually had more challenge matching funds on the Galad side, on the Give a Lamb a Drink side. But I think the breakdown's gonna be somewhere around 7,500 for the Children's Leukemia Foundation, and then the balance for Give a Lamb a Drink, that's half a drinker. These drinkers are about, every time we build one of these, it's about 25,000. Um, and So we did really good uh, just with that. And we had a lot of generous people that donated directly to Give a Lamb a Drink. People can go to California Wild Sheep's website, cawsf.org, click on Shop Now, and you should be able to make a donation to Give a Lamb a Drink at any time. And that is a tax deductible donation for U.S. citizens. Um, and and going forward, we do give away a sheep hunt every year to a life member. Next year we are planning to have a live event, and so the old rules will be in place that you must be a life member and you must be in the room. You have to attend, because ultimately, we learned a valuable lesson from, I believe it was Washington chapter. Those guys up there, Glenn Landris, Brian Bailey, and others, they really kind of pioneered that concept of life member drawing must be in the room, and it really grew their event wildly. And I remember a couple of years ago they asked me to host their event, and at that time it was the biggest dinner I had ever hosted. It was like 600 people. It was a big audience. We had a great time. Um, I like doing those big shows. But so we've got that going forward. If you're not a life member already, it's a good time to become a life member, especially if you're if you're in the Oregon, Nevada, Arizona area, or you have a hub that have a airport that flies direct to Sacramento. It's pretty convenient to get in and out for a weekend. It's a great event. That's going to be next year, I believe, first weekend of May. But yeah, easiest way is just go to the website and throw 5 or 10 or 20 bucks at Give a Lamb a Drink, and then just watch our Facebook page. We also Give a Lamb a Drink on Facebook. We do some summertime kind of short little auctions and giveaways and stuff so it's always kind of keep an eye out on us. Social media, Facebook as well as Instagram, California Wild Sheep on Instagram. And then watch my page as well, at donald.c.martin on Instagram, because I'll normally also plug whatever the chapter is doing to try to drive revenue to our program. We were at a time not that long ago. We were a chapter that didn't have very much money, and we had actually, I take it back. We had quite a bit of money, but we didn't have any projects. Well, now the pendulum swung the other way. Now we literally have almost unlimited projects. So now we have, we have this drive to try to generate this $3 million necessary to build these drinkers that are going to double the number of desert bighorns in California. So we're really driving towards that goal, and we're working with SCBS as fast as we can. And given the brutal summers down there when we're emergency water hauling, we really have a kind of a short construction period. Let's say November to March, April, that we can build these things, because it's just not feasible to try to build one of these projects when it's 120 down there. And I tell people, look, if you aspire to hunt a desert bighorn and is on your list or you apply, just understand it takes 10 years to grow a great big giant sheep. That's 10 miserable hot summers down there that those rams got to tough it out to become a 170 class sheep. So it just, at the end of the day, it boils down to water, which is kind of a funny way to put it. um, and especially when you're so close to the Inland Empire in the Los Angeles area that continues to keep poaching more and more water out of the water table and trying to harvest fossil water. We've been in a political fight over a project to drill a super well and tap one of the aquifers and pull 2 billion gallons of water out of there a year. It's a constant fight, but that's been the case in California for our entire history. California's entire state history is often revolves around water. And so that fight still continues, and we're fighting for water for wildlife. And if we can't save existing fossil water, then we need to capture the rainwater in the winter and store it in these man-made tinajas, these natural areas in the desert that capture and hold water. That's our best hope, to preserve what we have and to grow what we have and provide greater opportunity for not just California residents, but for everyone who aspires to hunt sheep in the state of California.
Right on, Don. Yeah, fantastic, man. Well, hey, I know we've taken a bunch of your time here, and I just want to say from BC and Wild Sheep BC, we're super thankful for all you do for us up here. You're always keeping an eye out for us. You're always looking out for us, supporting us. You were our guest speaker this year at our conservation event, and we're hoping we can have you up here for real. I know you're flying all over to these states for these events, so we're gonna get you on an airplane and get you up in Canada once we can get back together. So we're really excited about that. But I just want to say thank you for all you do, not just here in BC, just across the entire wild sheep community. You're an inspiration, just a tireless advocate for wild sheep and conservation and for hunting. And we're certainly grateful to have you as on our side. So thank you for all of that.
Oh, and thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Steve, for inviting me to talk with you guys. Great time. And thanks, Wild Sheep Society of BC. I've tried to support both the northern and southern chapters. And first time I ever went to Canada, I went to Kelowna for the chapter affiliate meeting there in BC, and it was just great experience, and met a lot of wonderful people, and everybody just I was a nobody back then. I mean, literally, nobody knew who I was, but Rob Kopecki, Chris Barker, everybody I met up there just treated me really great. And I'm proud to be a life member of Wild Sheep Society of BC, and I appreciate all you guys do for hunting and conservation up there.
Really appreciate it, Don. Have a great day, and thanks again. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.